first speech is titled Two Cheers for Made in China. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I come from Hong Kong, and back there we have the Victoria Harbour, where two types of fish live there, small fishes and big fishes. Now the small fish enjoyed blowing bubbles. She would curve her mouth and gently blow out delicate, graceful bubbles. One day the big fish visited her and greatly admired the bubble-blowing art. The small fish encouraged the big fish to try, and to the fish's amazement, the big fish succeeded in her first try and blew bigger bubbles than any other fish has ever seen before. Hong Kong was a manufacturing hub back in the 70s, and my grandmother used to work in a small factory where she assembled plastic flowers into home decorations. Sometimes she would bring home those artificial flowers, and my mother would help her assemble them at night. This assembling of plastic flowers became a collective memory of Hong Kongers in the late 70s. And in the late 70s, with China's opening up of the economy, China learned to manufacture goods as well. And most of Hong Kong's manufacturing base shifts to China because it's much more cheaper and more efficient to operate factories there. China became better and better in this manufacturing work and gained the name of the world's factory, where almost half of the goods produced in the world is made in China. However, both Hong Kong and China still faces problems. Hong Kong has lost its manufacturing work to China, and China, on the other hand, has been criticized by international standards as having lacked originality and creative work. Now, what could be done about this? Back at the harbour, let us see what the fishes are doing. Now, the small fish understood by observing the big fish that blowing bubbles is not her speciality anymore, and she understood the need to transform her art. She began creating ripples with her fins instead, and this created a lot of ripple patterns which were also very amazing. And our big fish, on the other hand, observed that every time she blew bubbles, all the other fishes gave 3 wholehearted cheers, but the wise turtle only gave 2. Now she asked the wise turtle about it. "What can I do to earn your final cheer?" The wise turtle replied, "Well, I see that you can blow very big bubbles, but a lot of other fishes can blow those bubbles as well. I don't see you in your bubbles. I don't see your originality or creativity in those bubbles." So the big fish walked away and pondered on these words, and then she strolled around the coral reefs where she observed their patterns and how they grew into different forms. She began to imagine and picture lots of different shapes and inspiration for her bubble blowing, and she began to blow bubbles shaped like hearts, flowers, stars, and finally earned the 3rd cheer of the wise turtle. Now Hong Kong, after losing all its manufacturing business, has shifted to the service-led industry, where 90% of our production comes to service provision, and China is currently on the right path when she came up with the Made in China 2025 plan, where the government policies aims to promote originality in work creation and for innovation and creativity. However, this does take time. We need to provide a good educational system which fosters inquisitive minds, and to create a good forum for exchange of ideas, such as our competition today, where lots of different people come over and share their ideas. With this in mind, I'm positive that China in the future will grow and become a world-leading manufacturer in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the speech for your...
Yes, and I have a second speech
for the final,
yes,
right?
yes, right.
Okay, so let us welcome again Hazel for her final speech.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for the second speech, the title is "The World is Too Much With Us," which is a poem by William Wordsworth on how we're neglecting nature because we're too focused on manufacturing and focused on industrial work. So here's my speech. exchange in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Those were happy days. The grades I get there wouldn't be counted in my local transcript, so I had all the freedom in the world to do whatever I wanted. Well, February was the first time I stepped on Rotterdam soil. I lived in the school dormitory, and outside there are big, tall trees. They dance for me every time the wind sings. One time, the wind screamed so loudly, the trees tap dance for me, and they bent their backs, and I was so afraid that they would break. The birds would come singing at around 4 p.m. This is because back there in Rotterdam, during the winter, the night turns dark by 6 p.m. And so the birds would come circle around the sky, sing, and announcing their presence to everyone in the facility before returning home to warmth and safety. During that time, I would walk with my friends from the market, carrying our lettuce, our tomatoes, and our eggs back home. On our way, the moon would guide us on our way. She sits comfortably on the sky and observing our every movement. One time, the moon was so big and it shone so brightly, we weren't sure if it really was the moon or was it the top of a building. And so my friend and I ran all the way home, trying to chase the moon and to see her in her full glory. When we reached there, we saw that it really was the moon, and we marveled at her beauty. There were also ducks on our way home. We watched them grow from tiny brown feather balls into miniature ducks. One time, my friend was pulling a prank on her, on the ducks, and she tried to scare them away by shouting loudly at them. The father duck was really angry and upset, and the father duck chased my friend off the grass, and my friend was so scared she promised never to scare the ducks again. Now, after a few months, I came home, back to Hong Kong, back to my apartment, where there are no more trees outside, only rows of other buildings. And I don't walk to school anymore. Why should I? There is a mass transit railway, which is an underground tunnel with underground trains, and it will carry me to my destination. I don't have any ducks greeting me, no birds announcing their presence, and there's no moon to guide me along my way. Now, of course, the moon and the stars are still there. However, they are all surrounded by fog, by cigarette smoke, and by car exhaust gas, and we couldn't see them anymore. A few months ago, I bought a pot of hydrangea. It's a type of flower which is blue in color, and they also have pink ones and yellow ones, but I bought the blue ones. And I water her every day in my home. I also scoots away the flies that tries to go near her, and I talk to her every day. I tell her about the vast oceans beyond this four-walled room. I talk to her about the forests and of the greenery, of the ducks, of the birds, and of my days at Rotterdam. Then I heard something from her. She murmured, and I had to lean closely and listen to what she has to say. And this is what I heard. Hazel, you don't have to be upset right now. One day, we'll all become part of nature. Thank you. Hazel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now for Hazel, we're going to have the floor evaluation, which means every one of us can give her constructive ideas on what to improve and what to keep in her speeches so that she can bring all our blessing with her to the baking contest. So, anyone would like to share?
I love the second speech more than the first one. The second speech, when you were presenting it, you were more excited. It's like a personal experience. But the first speech is more factual, expressing your opinion about comparison between Hong Kong and China, and maybe you say something about small fish versus big fish, the bubbles. I can understand the Hong Kong compare with China even easier than the story about big fish and small fish. Yeah, this is my opinion.
Thank you.
Hazel, I really like the first sense, but then you put it in a story, like big fishes and small fishes, and I feel that you have visualized the scenario, and this is more fun and interesting. But then like one opinion I want to give you is that I feel that the second speech is more comfortable for the audience to hear because like I have this problem too. I never stop like until I think I forgot what I have to say. In your second speech, I think you are not very familiar with the speech, so you actually look at your hand before you talk like continue with your speech, and this gives you some time in your second speech. So so for the first speech, I want you to like pause like between lines and give some time for your audience to like get what you mean.
Thank you.
Actually, I like both of the speeches. And for the first one, I put, it would be great if if you have some like visual aids or some props to assist you when you're telling the story of the fish. You can't use it. Okay, so maybe you try to replace. What I'm suggesting is that you're trying to use this to replace your hand gesture because it's a bit too
much.
Yeah, and that makes others, getting more attracted by the hand gesture, like the small fish and the big fish and things. And the idea is very interesting, and I guess they would like to hear that. However, I agree that for the first speech, you're less relaxing. For the second speech, we start to see you, Hazel, the charming, elegant, happy, and interesting person. But for the first speech, for the big fish and the small fish, it's also a very interesting story. So I wonder if you can also put your charm that you use in the second speech back to the first one. And for the second speech, it's a very good story actually. So I like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have one reminder too. In your first speech, you have used the word Hong Kongers. I'm not sure if this term is allowed in your Beijing. And also, you mentioned about the fish walked away, so you can use swam away. It's better.
Thank you.
That's all.
And for both of the speeches, perhaps you would like to use the stage more because we're going to have quite a lot of audience, I guess, for 60 competitors. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi. So I love your speech, especially the first one. I think someone may have amended for you, but one point to note is that I noticed your body language is that your arms are quite close to your body, and you have such that it makes people felt that you are quite nervous and you are trying to think what you are going to say next. The other thing is that maybe if you are not sure how to use your hands, for example, when you say you scan the duck, maybe you try to have some body movement that push away the duck. You will show people more what you are trying to talk about. Thank you.
Already Nansen, you can introduce to us what the stage is like. Because I'm just thinking. Well, I love your projection because you have great voice projection, and I like the way that you construct the story because you're talking about the analogy of about the fishes, and then that between Hong Kong and maybe mainland China. Because sometimes I'm not sure whether it's politically sensitive or not. Anyways, but then just try to be careful with that. I like the way that you make the contrast, but then I echo every word that Maria said about giving actually some breeze in between the stories. Because for one part you were talking about the story and then the reality and then story again, and then back to the how that can be related or reflected in the reality. And then I like the message they're bringing out. Only that the maybe just the variations in your tone and your voice, you can tune it to suit the purpose of that story. Especially when you're talking about your life in Amsterdam, I love that part a lot. When you're talking about the moon, it's quite dreamy. So maybe you can tune your sound to a more romantic tone and more light-hearted. Yes. Otherwise, I think in terms of the story, I like the message. What is the time frame for it?
4 minutes.
4 minutes max. Okay. So what's the time use?
Just over time.
What's the response over the
Oh,
just trying to be like quite a objective evaluator for this. So I like both of the speech. There are great visualization whereby everything you actually mentioned, I can visualize it. There's a good linkage between the audience and the speaker itself. Just a question though, are you allowed to walk around the stage? No, you only can stand there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. I mean, like you can actually show that you're being interactive with the audience, but if that's the case, it's fine. For the first speech, I noticed the first thing I need to notice is the time. When I was like, when you're talking, I noticed the rate sound was up. So it would be great that if you can narrow it to a few sentences whereby it's short, sweet,